Your 2024-25 Maple Leafs roster is set. How do we get there? How do we feel about it? Plus, it's our NHL season-long prediction show. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com. What's going on, Dave? The NHL is back. How we feeling on opening day, buddy?
Oh, it is exciting. I don't know how it didn't come up.
You don't sound exciting.
I was about to say.
It's exciting.
It's been a long day. I will say it has been a long day. But yeah, no. I mean, the anticipation, right? It felt weird because we started the season already.
Yeah.
Technically. That's why this feels kind of a weird season opening. But yeah, I mean, I'm just glad to have games that mean something.
Yeah.
And it's funny because past years, the regular season had been deemed not really worth really something to get excited for.
True. And you could argue that it's, could be a similar situation for the Leafs where it's okay, you could show me whatever in October, November, March, January. But what are you going to do in April? What are you going to do? You can be playing hockey games in May. There still is an element to that. We do expect for this team to make the playoffs, and, are things different under Berube than under Sheldon Keefe? I think that is totally, going to be part of it. But I think that there's a little bit more excitement for the start to this season just because it is very new. We got a new captain, new coach, new systems, and a very deep team compared to kind of what we've seen in the past, and a different team, a heavier team. So, I'm excited. I think that is going to be, intriguing to watch right from the get-go. You got Montreal tomorrow. So Leafs not getting opening night game action, but they have the Montreal Canadiens tomorrow to open their season. They'll be in Montreal. Then they travel to New Jersey, taking on Sheldon Keefe and the Devils in their home opener once they get back from Prague. And then they come home for their own home opener, and they've got the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby and Kyle Dubas coming to town. So quite the first three games, quite the compelling first three games for the Leafs and for Leaf fans at the very least. Yeah,
it reminds me of a famous Don Cherry rant of when the Leafs had three games and 4 nights to open the year. He got so mad about it because it's just why are we doing this? Why are we starting with the season on a back-to-back and then they play in 3 and 4 nights? As for us for content, it's great because we got a lot of games to talk about. 2, hockey junkies can't get enough. You get hockey 3 out of the 4 nights, and then I got your NFL Sunday for us football fans. I'm just happy that I got options to watch now, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a lot going on. You got baseball playoffs too; those have been electric. Right, the NBA's back, I guess, technically for now. Well, the Raptors, they got a preseason win, so a shout out to Sean Woodley and the Locked On Raptors podcast. You can go check that out if you're itching for Raps, but I'm sure you won't come around to them for a little bit. Still a couple of weeks until their season really gets going. But yeah, the Maple Leafs, it's going to come fast and heavy and right away. And I was having this conversation today. I was filling in for gameplay on TSN 1050, and I was chatting with Mark Masters, and you look at the last, 3, 4, 5 years, really the entire Sheldon Keefe era, and the team has historically gotten off to pretty slow starts. You can even date it back to Babcock. It's almost like the Matthews-Marner era has really gotten off to slow starts throughout the course of the whole time that they've been here, and they just have not had winning records in October very often. So, a bit of a difficult sked to start, but under Berube, let's see if things really are different. I guess, a quick start to the season could possibly, mean something different if they come out and they win 2 of the first 3 games, or they win all 3, hopefully, and look good doing it, look like a Berube team, a healthy team, a mature team. I think that'll obviously, bode well for the Maple Leafs and allow Leaf fans to believe, okay, something's different for sure.
Well, that's it, right? I get asked all the time. Even with the last few days, like, what do I think of the Leafs this year? What do I think of the Leafs this year? I'm like, I won't know until I get to see this team.
Yeah.
Certain situations. Like,
yeah.
The big one for me, they play well against good teams. How are they going to play against teams that they should beat, but have always lost to?
Well, opening night, I guess we'll find out pretty early, right? Against the Montreal Canadiens. Like, that's not a very good roster, right? And they've got some injury issues that they're dealing with. They've got question marks all over the place. It's not a team expected to compete for a playoff spot. Toronto, in theory, should go in and absolutely wallop them, but will they? In the past, they've struggled with teams like that. With the Coyotes for forever, they've always struggled with them, especially on home ice. And the Sabres always gave them fits. Like, yeah, teams that just, how are they against teams like they playing down to their opponent has been a big storyline for this group, and maybe that'll be different under Craig Berube. He won't allow them to take their foot off the gas, and every game's going to be imperative and important to be going 100%. So hopefully, that's another good thing to be keeping an eye on early with this group to see if, all right, are things different? Did you happen to see what the schedule looks like for today, though? Opening day, kind of weird. The first game starts at 4:30 Eastern time. It's St. Louis and Seattle, but that's a 1:30 and 2:30 local start on a Tuesday. Isn't that just the weirdest, first game of the season? Like, what do you think there? Major League Baseball? Like, that's not how things operate in the NHL.
Well, especially you're talking about a Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know. I guess maybe people in Seattle just decided, I don't want to work there. I'm just going to go to a hockey game. For baseball, it's a little different. Like, they do it this is around the time when the playoffs. They'll throw a game on in the after, 4.
Well, even opening day, right? In baseball, they do have a lot of afternoon games on opening day, right? That's
American
a thing,
sports fans just look, American sports fans will tailgate on for a Thursday night football game or Monday night football game. I don't care, but
I guess
for hockey, it is interesting to do it like that for sure.
It is out of the norm. And then, so it's a triple header. So it's St. Louis, Seattle, 4:30 Eastern time. And then Boston and Florida. The banner goes up in Florida at sunrise. And that'll be a good one. I don't believe Swayman will be playing. I think they already announced that Korpisalo is going to be the starter. Swayman's still got to get caught up after missing all of camp. He's signed. He's now a Bruin. But Korpisalo is going to get the bulk of the starts probably for the first week or so until he's ready to go. And then the nightcap, Utah. Get to see the new Utah Hockey Club in action against Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks. So I like the matchups for the back half. Boston, Florida, Utah, Chicago. So I'll be ready and rocking to watch some puck tonight. I'm excited for it. The Seattle St. Louis game, I don't know. I think people have stuff going on at 4:00 in the afternoon, but we'll see. What is kind of interesting, they were talking about it on Overdrive today, actually. So Ray Ferraro is calling the St. Louis-Seattle game, and maybe this is part of it. Maybe this is because they wanted to do this. He's calling the St. Louis-Seattle game and then flying to Chicago or Utah for the Utah-Chicago game. So he's calling 2 games in one day. How ridiculous is that?
I mean, yeah, that is a really long day for Ray. So good on him for putting himself through that. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't ever think I've ever seen a broadcast team do that before. So maybe they're just like, We're gonna do
two games, two different cities. I mean, it would have been one thing if, like, I don't know, in the bubble, maybe in the bubble we saw that. Perhaps I don't recall when they were doing like staggered games throughout the day. But like we're talking two different cities. He's got to go from Seattle to Utah.
Yeah, I'm just checking right now. That flight is about a 2.5-hour flight.
So the game starts at 4:30, and yeah, I don't want to do this math. This is going to be
like 4:30. Let's say 2.5 hours. So 7:30. He'll be out of there. Like that's cutting it close.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. I mean, I guarantee you he's got a private bird or something bringing him, like, I don't know if he's got something like on top of the arenas or what, but that'll be interesting to see how that kind of all plays
and
out.
And now down to Ray for the post-game analysis.
Yeah, essentially.
Ray's out of the building. Okay, Ray's out of the building.
He's been calling off a tube from the chopper. But hey, man, I'm happy though. We get hockey back, and so St. Louis, Seattle's kicking things off at 4:30 Eastern time. Then Boston, Florida at 7, and then Utah, Chicago with the nightcap to end night 1, and then night 2 begins with the Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. What roster will the Toronto Maple Leafs be icing? Well, we finally have our answer. The opening night roster is officially set for Toronto. A flurry of roster moves were made on Monday to get compliant by the 5 p.m. deadline. We will tell you what those are and show you what the lineup is going to look like come night 1. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NHL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And like we said, we've got hockey back and up and running today. You can now go and bet on these games today. I'm taking a look at what we got for the odds. The Kraken are favored at -137 on the money line. The Bruins are dogs going into Florida. Florida favored at -152. And the Utah Hockey Club favored over Chicago pretty heavily at -164. If you like any of those games and any other prop bets, you can go wager those right now over on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday all season long. So if it's your first time kind of stumbling upon us and you're thinking, what are these cats up to? We're a daily Maple Leafs podcast, and we put up new episodes each and every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. And you can find it wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube as well. So the Maple Leafs, they begin game 1 of 82, their journey tomorrow against the Montreal Canadiens. But in order to get cap compliant by 5 p.m. on Monday, the Maple Leafs had to do a plethora of moves and roster decisions and signings. And let's kind of work our way through it, Dave, to see how the Maple Leafs opening night roster became what it is for the 24-25 season. So here's what you need to know, Dave. The Maple Leafs officially signed both Max Pacioretty and Steven Lorentz. Don't call me Lorentz. Steven Lorentz. Pacioretty coming in at $873,770,000 as the cap hit. Steven Lorentz at $775,000 cap hit. Pacioretty, though, does have some games played bonuses, which can earn him up to $1.5 million, but that bonus money will count against next year's cap. The other thing we need to know, and we can break these down in a moment, but the other thing that we need to know, Easton Cowan was sent back down to London for the season, so no Easton Cowan all year. Once you get sent down to the juniors, you are ineligible to play in the NHL that season, so we'll have to wait until next year to get our eyes back on Easton Cowan in a Maple Leafs uniform. I would expect for him to be a big contributor, though, for Team Canada at the World Juniors.
I mean, that's probably what they're thinking, right? Not quite ready for the NHL. I know the juniors, many believe he didn't have much to prove at juniors, but at least give him a chance to work out those junior habits. Although
Yes.
it's going to be a little hard to do in junior, but Team Canada will be, I think, the calling card for one Easton Cowan.
Yeah. And then here's where the cap gymnastics came into play, Dave, because we talked about it on yesterday's podcast. There's too many bodies and too much money being spent. So they had to find a way to get to 23 guys that fit under $88 million in cap space. And Brandon Pridham, the absolute cap wizard that he is, was able to do it and somehow got this team cap compliant by $1, Dave. $1. That's how close and tight to the cap he was able to get this team after a flurry of moves. And the moves were as follows. So Fraser Minton and Connor Dewar were placed on injured reserve, not long-term injured reserve, just the regular injured reserve, meaning that they could be activated after 1 week on IR. So that's good news. Sounds like Connor Dewar's injury is not as long-term as it maybe seemed, which is, he's been in practice skating. So maybe that is, it was indicative that it's not as long-term of an injury. So him going on IR, he'll be eligible to play for the Maple Leafs within a week. 3 players were placed on LTIR. Yanni Hakanpää, who we all expected. Dakota Mermies was also placed on LTIR. And Calle Jarnkrok was placed on LTIR. And that one was a bit of a surprise. We know that he was hurt. He didn't skate in practice today. And weirdly, when asked about it afterwards, Berube said he's day-to-day. Apparently not, because if you are on LTIR, you do have to miss 10 games and 24 days. So the Maple Leafs play 10 games in 23 days, so they will not be eligible to return for their game on October 31st. I think first time that they'll be eligible to play will be November 2nd against the St. Louis Blues. So Calle Jarnkrok, Yanni Hakanpää, and we didn't expect Dakota Mermies to make this team anyways, but all 3 of those guys will be out for 24 days or 10 games. So at minimum, they will not be back until November 2nd. Could be the 31st too, by the way. Do you know if that's from Monday or from Tuesday? The 24 days.
Yeah, that wasn't really made clear to me. My guess is that when they are placed on LTIR, that's when it starts.
When does the league year start, though? That's where I'm confused. Did it start today or does it start tomorrow? Or has it already started? This is the only issue I have. But regardless, either the 31st or the 2nd, depending on if Monday counted as day 1. That is actually the real math. But either way, they will not be part of the program for the next few weeks. So after all of those roster moves, we were able to get a 23-man roster that is cap compliant by $1, and we know what it's going to look like now, Dave. So we have the roster, and actually I'll pull it up so that everyone can see what it looks like, and we'll break it down for you guys as well. Just share the screen here, pick up Puckpedia. Bam! This is going to be your opening day roster for the Toronto Maple Leafs this upcoming season. So we'll just quickly say for those listening to the podcast what the roster looks like, and then we can break it down here, Dave. So Matthew Nyes with Matthews and Marner, Max Domi with John Tavares and William Nylander, Max Pacioretty on the 3rd line with Pontus Holmberg and Nick Robertson, Steven Lorentz on the 4th line with David Kampf and Ryan Reeves. Bobby McMann skated as the extra in practice today and is expected to be a healthy scratch for game number 1 against Montreal tomorrow. On defense, no surprise here, Morgan Riley and Chris Tanev. Also, Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Jake McCabe as your second pair, as it's been all spring long. And then Simon Benoit and Connor Timmins. Looks like Connor Timmins has officially won this job of the 6th defenseman over Timothy Liljegren and is currently, as he was in practice today, slated to be on the 3rd pair with Simon Benoit, with both Phil Myers and Liljegren making the team. but will be healthy scratches in game number 1. And then Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz as your goaltenders. And yes, as mentioned, to get there, Dewar lands on IR, Kalle Jarnkrok on LTIR, Yanni Hakanpää and Dakota Mermis also on LTIR. And I believe Fraser Minton was also placed on injured reserve as well, but that doesn't matter because he was sent down and doesn't have to go against the cap. But that is your team for opening night to start off the Maple Leafs 24-25 season. And how we feeling, Dave? How we feeling?
Well, obviously, I was wondering how this puzzle was going to get solved. It was either somebody was getting traded or somebody was going to be placed on LTIR. We kind of figured Jarnkrok was still dealing with an injury, but maybe he would be in the conversation to be on the opening night roster. Once he went on LTIR, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's kind of where
it made it easy, right? It made it easy for the math to math.
Well, yeah, not only the cap math, but the roster math. Like, yeah, they have 8 defensemen, which when was the last time the Leafs opened a season with 8 defensemen on the roster?
Well, they haven't been. They've been opening up.
Leafs had options on the roster.
Exactly. They've opened with like 20 players like 3 years in a row. It's the first time that they'll have someone in the press box on night 1. Yeah, probably since Jason Spezza.
I was gonna say no. Now the press box is like, oh, there's actually more than one of us in here now. This is new.
It's a party.
But yeah, obviously the questions that will come down the road is once these guys are healthy, how are you going to make it all work? Obviously, there's going to be fewer defensemen on this roster once that's all said and done. And I mean, we were wondering what the dollar amount was going to be for Pacioretty, and we figured, and then it totally skipped my mind that performance bonuses could have been a part of the agreement, right? Because we heard in like the almost 1.5 range, right?
Which is technically what it was. It is a, like, with bonuses, he can earn up to 1.5. It's 10 games and 35 games. So if he plays 35 games with the Leafs, he'll earn the full 1.5, but only $873,770 will count against the cap this year. The remainder of whatever bonuses will count against the cap next year, but that's next year's problem. Brandon Pridham and Brad Treliving will worry about that next year. They had to worry about getting it done this season, and they got it done to within $1. It's so impressive what Pridham can do, man.
Yeah, it's just like so. Brandon, how much is that left? $1
$1, Bob. All right, that works. That works.
Just a little bit more, and he could have gone a hot dog at Costco. Just a little more.
Just a little more. You couldn't have got Patches to, save 50 cents on that contract. Tisk. I will say, though, and it's something that we had talked about in the summer where, prior to bringing in Pacioretty, prior to bringing in Lorentz, it appeared that the Leafs were poised to be able to start the year without having to use LTIR, and they could have accrued cap space. Obviously, that won't happen now. There's still an opportunity once they get out of LTIR, I suppose, when, guys get healthy. If that happens, if guys get healthy, there's also, a possibility that other players could get hurt by the time Hakanpää or Jarnkrok are ready to return. And, this cap crunch never becomes an actual situation. That happens all the time. But yeah, so this is it. This is what the roster is going to look like. We can, look at it one more time. In terms of the lines, I suppose, does Bobby McMann not being on the roster night 1 surprise you on the active roster?
You know what? Like when I was looking at the lines and I saw that Bobby McMann was kind of floating around a bit, I'm like, oh, this is not good for Bobby. And like, I get it. Like if you listen to what Craig Berube was saying, like I think it's more of we expect more from Bobby McMann, and this might be a way to just a bit of a wake up call for him.
Well, it's just funny because it felt like in the summer people were I mean, we could.
I would like that too. I'm a huge.
Yeah, let's say we're probably in the same boat where we're penciling him in as a lock middle six, possibly second line guy, and then after camp shakes out, he's not even in the top 12. He's going to be sitting in the press box eating popcorn, watching his team take on the Montreal Canadiens. Same with Timothy Liljegren, right? Lost his job to Connor Timmins.
And in a way, Bob McMann couldn't even beat out Ryan Reeves for a spot. Like that's.
I do wonder how much of that has to do with how chippy that game's expected to be with Arbor Jackeye. Like,
yeah, I know you're not going into that game without some semblance of protection. Like,
yeah,
there's nobody that really in the NHL. There are very few that are going to be able to go up against an Arbor Jackeye, and I think Bob McMann makes if he has to be out so Ryan Reeves can be in for this game, I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it because I also want to see Max Petcher. We'll talk about it a bit tomorrow, but seeing Max Petcher go out in the Bell Center.
Yeah,
Leafs jersey. That's going to be hilarious and fun.
Yeah, you think we'll talk about it tomorrow. I want to ask, do you think he gets booed? But hold your answer because that will be a discussion on tomorrow when we preview the game for opening night. But you talk about Pacioretty on the line with Pontus Holmberg and Nick Robertson. Pontus Holmberg really, developing into a trustworthy third line center is kind of what allowed the Leafs, I guess, to move off of the Nylander experiment and push Tavares up the lineup because they seem to have trust in Holmberg. And I've spoken with a couple of people multiple times. We've heard Berube come out and praise Holmberg and praise how well he's played, but apparently even Brad Treliving has come out and unpromptedly talked up Pontus Holmberg and how his camp has been successful this year, and he's rewarded with not only a spot on the opening night roster where he was someone who we discussed potentially at the beginning of camp could have been, under, pressure to perform, or he could have been on the waiver wire. Not only is he on the team, but he's in the top 9 and solidified himself as a third line center. I think that's a positive story and development from camp.
Absolutely, right? Especially with the Leafs not thrilled with, are not keen on with the Nylander at center experiment. It's almost like, all right, you're bringing Tavares up to second line center. Who's the third line center? And we asked this all summer long.
Yep.
Who's going to be the third line center? Minton's hurt. That took away that opportunity there. And credit to Pontus Holmberg, put himself in a position to
grabbed it,
solidify himself a proper spot in the lineup, right? Because he's one of those guys where it's like, if he's not the third line center, yeah, he could play. He could be the winger, right? He could play third line, right wing. He could play on the fourth line, but it's almost like they wanted him to take more of a step in that regard. So, good on him for that. And what this really does for the next few days, right? We're talking about these guys being out long term, and I think this is also a bit of an extended tryout because we know a few of those guys that are on LTIR are going to come back.
Yep.
Sure, some cap stuff is going to have to get sorted out, but there's also going to be a bit of a message to the guys in the lineup. If you're not cutting it, eventually there are other options that are going to come back, and those spots you have, don't get too comfortable, right?
Good point. Like you've got the spot today, right? You've got the spot today on Tuesday. You'll have it on Wednesday in night 1, right? You'll play that first game, but Connor Dewar's only on IR. He's eligible to come back in a week. They're going to need to find $1.1 million in cap space in order to activate him. And, then Yarncroc is not going to be too far away after that. And hopefully Yanni Hakanpää. And not only does that create, cap situations, but there's 3 of those players, 3 of the 23 that made the team, barring any other injuries, will have to be waived, will have to be traded, moved of some kind in order to make it all work. So, yeah, there's still competition to keep your job, to remain in the lineup, to remain on the active roster. So, good point by you. Don't get complacent, I'm sure is what the message is from Berube to those players, to Lorentz, to Reeves, to Holmberg, to Nick Robertson, who had a great camp. But, hey, don't get complacent. You could get replaced pretty quick if you're not holding up your end of the bargain. So, I think that the depth that the Leafs had accumulated hopefully will create some internal competition for the guys that'll fuel them all season long, not just camp, but all year long. All right, Dave, let's put the Leafs to the side for now. They might come up here on the next segment, but we can pick things back up tomorrow when we preview the first game of the season between them and the Montreal Canadiens. We'll also do our yearly over-under segment tomorrow as well when it pertains to the Maple Leafs. So we'll do all of that tomorrow. But up next, since it's the start of the NHL season in North America today, it's time for us to give our NHL predictions. We'll have our division winners, our cup champion, our Hart Trophy pick, and we've each got one bold prediction on the year. That's all coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join more than 3.5 businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast, and also leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. And listeners to the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. That is Indeed.com/lockedon right now, and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you each and every day, Monday through Friday on the Locked On Leafs podcast. All right, Dave, the NHL season begins today on North American ice. We've already decided to discuss that. Jersey, Buffalo, trying to think of who the other team was. Jersey and Buffalo played 2 games in Prague. Devils won both games. They're up 2-0, or I guess they got 4 points, 2-0-0 on the season. And Buffalo did not start the way that they wanted to. As that's a team that's looking to kind of make some noise and maybe take that next step and get themselves into a playoff spot, starting off 0-2. Not an ideal way. But the rest of the league begins their journey tonight, tomorrow, and the following days here. And it's the, official start of the NHL season. The one last week didn't count. This is the official start, which means it's time for you and I to make our yearly predictions. We're going to go through the division winners. We're going to make our Stanley Cup champion selection, our Hart Trophy pick, and then we both have a bold prediction that we're going to make about the season. Let's start with our Hart Trophy picks. Who do you think is going to take home the Hart this year as the league's MVP?
It's hard to not go up against the guy who has won it or is usually always the favorite. So I'm gonna go with Connor McDavid. I know he didn't win it last year, but he was very close last year. Probably could have won it, and nobody would have argued against it.
Yeah, honestly, could have. Definitely could have done. He still led the league in scoring, if I'm not mistaken. He won the Art Ross, didn't he? Yeah, I think he's going to do the exact same thing. Lead the league in scoring, 140-ish points again this year. I got him winning the Hart Trophy, though. I do. I think
Kucherov won the Art Ross.
Oh, Kuch ended up winning the Art Ross?
Yeah. Barely.
Another guy who could have won the Hart there. But I still think McDavid's going to have a big year. I think the Oilers are going to have a good year. I like what they did, adding to their group. They'll come up a little bit later on. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I think that McDavid, it's time that he wins himself another Hart Trophy, another league MVP. So I'm going to also saddle up next to you and bet on Connor McDavid. I think he's plus 125 on FanDuel to win the Hart. All right.
I've seen plus 140, 150 right now. So.
Okay, so they've changed a little bit. All right, plus 150, getting a little better odds. Little better odds. All right, let's get to the division winners here. We'll start in the Atlantic, obviously, the division that the Toronto Maple Leafs are in. Who do you see winning the Atlantic division?
I'm taking the homer pick. I'm going with the Leafs.
You did it. I wasn't sure if you were going to do it or not. I wasn't sure if you believed in the Buds. Why do you believe in the Buds, who, outside of the Canadian division, have not won a division banner in quite some time, Dave? Why is this the year?
I just think that, one, I think they understand that they got to really hone in on their play during the regular season. It's the one thing they haven't done throughout their, as you said, throughout their entire era of the Austin Matthews era. They have not won the division. I feel like that's something that's always kind of put them in a bit of the backseat in almost every single series that they play. They've always had to start it on the road. They don't usually get the better matchup, right? And an opponent in the first round. Plus, out of all the Atlantic Division teams, I feel like the Leafs did they got better, I think, the most. Like, they improved the most out of all the teams, because that blue line, the way that blue line is constructed now, the size and the penalty kill, I think, has looked really good. There, I mean, obviously preseason's a little different than regular season, but the areas that they needed to improve, they did. And I think it's only going to get better once guys get healthy, like a Hakanpää, if he's able to be healthy.
Yep.
And things like that. So I just like what they did in the offseason. Florida is going to be their biggest challenger, obviously. But even Florida's, we'll see. There's a bit of a Stanley Cup hangover maybe on them. I don't know. Paul Maurice is going to make sure that doesn't happen, but
I think there's going to be, and it's not just because it's one Stanley Cup. They went to back Stanley Cup finals, and I watched the DiStefano and Tkachuk NHL series.
What a series!
It's been pretty good so far, I will say. But Tkachuk talked about afterwards, how it's essentially been just like 2 long seasons, like last year going to the Stanley Cup, and it rolled right into last year, and then they went into the Stanley Cup final again, Game 7 of a Cup final. Now they won, right? So I'm sure that feels a little bit better than it did the year before. But, again, he talked about last year how it was just such a grind. Now that's 2 straight seasons to the Stanley Cup final. So I think there will be a bit of a hangover this season. So I'm actually with you. I think this is the year that the Maple Leafs win themselves the division. And I think it's about getting off to a good start. We talked about it earlier. How Octobers have not been kind to the Maple Leafs. I think, Berube will make sure this team starts on time. So I'm with you with the Maple Leafs. All right, the Metro, the other team in the East Division. I'm all Jersey this year, man. I'm fully on that bandwagon. My boy, our former boy, Sheldon Keefe. I think he's a good coach, great regular season coach, and I think he coaches that Devils team that's already 2-0 on the year to a Metro Division title after missing out on the playoffs a season ago.
I've been flip-flopping between them and the Rangers.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a battle between those two. I'm just concerned that if like a Dougie Hamilton goes down, can the Devils, that's been one of those hurdles that they haven't been able to really overcome.
They did improve, like they brought in Brendan Dillon, right? Yes. Luke Hughes is now another year older. Simo Nemec is another year older. So like they might have more depth, I guess, behind Dougie this year that wasn't there in the past. So that's one thing, I guess, that they have kind of in their back pocket.
So yeah, I like the Devils. I think they're going to be one of the teams that takes the biggest rise after what happened last year. But
I mean, they finally got a goalie, right? Like that's the biggest thing.
I'm still leaning the Rangers. I think it's going to be narrow. But I like the makeup of that team. Shesterkin. I think they're the best goalie in that division. So
yeah.
And he's playing for a contract.
True. And wants a big contract too. So go up there and prove it.
So yeah. I can't wait to see what he's going to be good this year.
Yeah. No, it's. I think it's between those two teams for sure, and it's going to be close. It's going to be a nice tight battle till the end. I'm with you. But I got Jersey. You got the Rangers. We'll see who comes out on top at the end. All right, moving out to the West, the Central Division. Who do you got?
I'm gonna go Colorado.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think that team is too talented, and if they get the goaltending to be better, like they got into the playoffs with brutal goaltending. Wait until the team actually gets goaltending.
Apparently, that Justice and Noonan kid might get a real run, a real look. Like it'll be more of a split than people think between him and Georgiev. So for you fantasy players, Justice and Noonan, keep him in mind going forward. The other team that I contemplated, obviously, or two other teams that I contemplated here in the Central, Dallas, but Dallas's D got decimated over the summer. Like I was looking at the roster, I'm like, they got Matt Dumma and Ilya Lyubushkin as in their top 4. Like
losing Tanev, losing Hakanpää, no Joe Pavelski.
Yeah. I love their forward group. I love Ottinger, but yeah, I think Colorado's the deeper team and the better defensive team also, which is
like, would it be crazy to say Nashville even leaps Dallas for at least second?
I don't think it's crazy. It's not crazy. No, it's not crazy to suggest that at all. I think Winnipeg could probably put themselves in that argument as well.
Yeah.
But I think that the Avs, along with you, I think they're just a step ahead of the rest of the class. It'll be a competitive division though for, kind of that second, third, maybe wild card spot between those other 3-4 teams there. All right, the Pacific Division.
I'm Oilers. As much as I'm an Oilers hater, I like where they're going in terms of they got Skinner Skinner should hopefully be better than he was to start last year.
Yes.
That was a big reason I think they didn't make first, because they eventually went on that run when they made the coaching change. But I think Stuart Skinner can be a lot better this year, right? I like the additions that they made. I think that it balances things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'm still iffy on their blue line, but like Connor McDavid, I think is gonna be a man on a mission this year. Like you watch that Prime series,
yeah.
I don't. He's I do not want to be a team going up against Connor McDavid this year.
Connor McDavid's ready to win a cup.
Yeah,
he's ready. He's definitely ready, and he'll be motivated. And I love Edmonton this year. As much as it pains, Leafs people to hear. I thought that they did a really good job retaining most of their group and then adding to it. Like I've got bringing in a guy like Victor Arvidsson, bringing in a guy like who they bringing from Buffalo, Jeff Skinner. You brought in Jeff Skinner.
There are 2 Skinners in Edmonton.
Yeah, Jeff Skinner, who could still score you 25-ish goals, especially playing on a line with Draisaitl. That power play is always going to be vaunted. Zach Hyman is going to go out there and probably get another 40 goals. I don't think 50 this year, but I think he's a 40-goal scorer again. I think it's a great squad. So I've got Edmonton winning the Pacific, and I've got Edmonton winning the Stanley Cup. I do. I've got Edmonton beating New Jersey in 6 games. That's my cup prediction. Like I said, McDavid, he's ready to win a cup. And I think he makes it happen this year. I think it happens.
You're picking Oilers or your cup pick?
Oilers over the Devils in 6 games. That's my cup pick.
Oilers over the Devils. You're huge on the Devils this year.
I'm big on the Devils. I've been big on the Devils for a few years, and they flopped on me last year. But I really like how well built they are from back with Markstrom all the way up to the front, and they're incredibly deep. Keith, as the coach in the playoffs, does worry me when it comes to the Devils. But I don't know. I like them. I like that team. I like that roster. I think they've assembled a pretty good group. But like the Edmonton Oilers, a little bit more.
I like Edmonton. I just get worried if they go up against a Colorado. That didn't go so well for them the last time. My only concern about if Colorado gets the goaltending, I like them in the Cup final. I think I'm gonna go Avalanche as my cup pick.
Avalanche against.
I don't want to say because I don't want to jinx the possibility.
Just say it.
No,
Just
it's
say
gonna
it,
be. I
Dave.
think it's gonna be Avs and Rangers in the Cup final.
Avs Rangers. That'd be a good Cup final. That'd be a really good Cup final. That would be a fun one to watch.
I think I do.
It'll
think
be more fun.
Avs Leafs.
Nope.
Oh, Oilers Leafs. I know.
Oilers Leafs would be.
You've been wanting
the
that
best
for
Cup final.
years.
I know. It's a possibility. It is a possibility.
It is obviously a possibility.
We'll
I just don't want to put that out there, and just, you know what,
Dave? That's pretty. That's pretty. You think you have that type of power? You think you have that type of power? If you say it, it's just not going to happen.
I mean, do whatever we can, man. We do whatever we can.
All right, buddy. All right, so you've got the Avs beating the Rangers. They got the Oilers beating the Devils. And let's wrap things up with a bold prediction. What's a bold prediction you have for the upcoming 2024-2025 NHL season, Dave?
Oh, man. Yeah, let's hope we... I think the Ottawa Senators will make the playoffs this year. Is that bold? I do.
So I had the same bold prediction, but I had an extension to it that made it bold. I don't think just saying the Sens making the playoffs is bold. I think that they have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. I believe that we're going to see 5 teams from the Atlantic make the playoffs. I think they're going to claim both wildcard spots. But what I think is the bold part of the prediction, yes, I believe that the Senators make the playoffs, but I believe that we're going to see the Battle of Ontario reignite this spring. Leafs, Sens, round 1. That's my bold prediction.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Wouldn't that be something to watch?
It would be. I mean, nothing would make me happier than to relive what the Leafs used to do to the Senators in the playoffs.
The early 2000s Maple Leafs just making the Sens their daddy every single year. It was awesome. It was great to see. And then we'd have to, we get to chirp our boy Ross and Pilsy over on Locked On Sens. So that would be a grand old time.
And then we can join all the Leafs as they go for their home game in Ottawa.
Exactly. So that's my bold prediction. Not just that the Sens make the playoffs, but they'll make the playoffs and see the Leafs in round 1. That's my bold prediction. Anything else you want to mention before we kind of put a close and a bow on today's show? Any other bold predictions you have that you wanna get out into the universe so that you can look back and say, "See, I told you. See, I told you." Anything else?
Not right now.
Utah will make the playoffs. Is that bold?
Yeah, I mean, the Central Division is a pain in the ass.
I know. I think they win. I think they get a wild card spot.
The Vegas Golden Knights do not make the playoffs this year.
Ooh, yeah, because you hate Ilya Samsonov.
I just want that team to have some bad luck all their way eventually.
Really quickly, actually, that long list of Leafs who got waived yesterday: Justin Hall, Pierre Engvall, James Reimer, Zach Aston-Reese. Reimer and Reese got claimed, so they will start the year in the NHL. Sadly for our boys, Justin Hall and Pierre Engvall,
our boys, yeah,
they cleared waivers and will be reporting to the American League, and that is brutal. Justin Hall has another year left on his deal after this at 3.4. Pierre Engvall, 6 more years at $3 million. Boy, those are tough contracts.
And we said at the moment that deal Engvall signed, I was like,
and Hall signed for 3.4. It was like, all right, I'm glad the Maple Leafs let that go.
Yeah, I was so happy just to not have him on the team, but I said it. Somebody should have put Lou in the loony bin for that one.
I will say, I think both of them are probably in the NHL if they weren't making that much money. I think Justin Hall is a capable 6'7" defenseman. I think Pierre Engvall is a capable 4th liner. But at $3 million and 3.4, Can't make it work. Can't make it work. If they were league minimum guys, possibly, but at that price, no. Reimer got picked up by Anaheim off waivers, and Zach Aston-Reese going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. All right, that will do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and get the audio version wherever you get a podcast and receive daily Leafs content all season long. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Enjoy day 1 of the NHL. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. It's day 1 for the Maple Leafs. Leafs, Habs. We will break it all down and preview it and get to our over-unders predictions for your Toronto Maple Leafs. That's all coming up on tomorrow's show. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.